Good evening and welcome to the Sierra Club of Southern Maryland Sustainable Towns Forum. We're glad to host you tonight and talk about this exciting topic with our distinguished panel of guests. As always, before we get started, we'd love to thank you for attending with us and being with us. We want to go over some of our Zoom norms, also talk to you a little bit about our poll questions that'll pop up on your screen along the way, the Q&A function within our Zoom webinar. And of course, if you have questions, we'd love for you to ping us either in our chat box or using the Q&A box on your Zoom screen. First things first is, of course, welcome. And the chat function, of course, is for you to correspond with us, the panelists, as well as our technical persons behind the scenes. The Q&A is for you to ask questions that are not covered here tonight. We always want to let you know that if there are questions that we're unable to get to, that we will always provide supporting documentation or follow-ups by sending emails directly to the Sierra Club. You can send emails directly to one of us or some of our panelists if you have particular questions about their respective jurisdictions. Tonight, of course, we'll be talking about sustainable towns, Zoom norms. So if you are an attending guest, you are not heard in the webinar. Our webinar panelists can only see and hear each other. They can't hear you. So any of your commentary, feedback, questions, they will all need to go into the Q&A box as well as our chat box. If you are live on Facebook, we do have our technical staff behind the scenes that are monitoring that chat box as well. So if you have questions, you can post them there. Otherwise, we are, of course, excited to talk with you tonight and ready to get started. So I am Teresa Ball. I am a Sierra Club of Maryland chapter XCOM member. So I sit on the board for the Sierra Club of Maryland. So we have a great panelist of guests tonight, along with our chat box and the introduction of our panelists. You should see a poll question on your screen right at this moment. And we want to know what county in which you live right now. In our Southern Maryland region, we love to give shout outs to our individual attendees from our region here in Southern Maryland. And if you're chiming in from another place outside of that, please let us know so I can give you a quick shout out. So I'd like to start with our introductions. And I'm going to start with Councilman Lawton. Please introduce yourself. You're on mute, Councilman.
All right, I got it. Okay, so I'm Councilwoman Lawton. I am currently serving in the town of North Beach. So a little bit about me. I'm actually a business professional. With a significant amount of technical background. My career started quite some time ago. I did 20 plus years with the United States Navy, proud of that. As a military logistician in the first 10 years, supply chain management, but system design, major weapon systems and ship systems towards the last 10 years of my career. So that's significant because it's really impossible to design any system for the United States Navy or any part of the DoD for that matter, without considering environmental conditions, wherever that is. Since retiring in the early 2000s, I became an entrepreneur. I moved into personal development and health and wellness. Everyone was a little shocked, and I said, well, you know, back in War of 1812, we said we have met the enemy, and he is us. So I realized that many of the decisions that we were making were personal paradigms, and so I wanted to learn more about that. Since then, and because of some things that happened in the economy, I shifted my focus to community-based nonprofit work. And so that's where I am and how I ended up to be a council member here in North Beach.
We're glad to have you. Just as a side note, tell our listening audience, where is North Beach? What county is it in Maryland?
Oh, it's in Calvert County.
Wonderful.
County.
Wonderful. All right. So David, you are up next. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Teresa. Can you hear me now?
Hear you very well.
Thank you, Teresa. And thank you for the opportunity to participate tonight. And also thank those who are attending and watching. Again, my name's Dave Jenkins. I'm a 35-year resident of the town of La Plata in Charles County. I come from a background in both education and experience in city and regional planning, economic and community development. And that includes a number of work experiences in the planning field at the state, local, and regional level. I then have also had some experience on the private sector working for several engineering and development companies. And then I worked for a couple of nonprofits. During this time, I also am a 38-year U.S. Army veteran, having spent several years on active duty, and then I ended up transitioning to the Maryland and Virginia Army National Guards, and I was deployed overseas to Bosnia in the year 2000 for a year. And I was elected as a town council member in La Plata in May of 2021, so we're coming up on my first year as a town council member from La Plata for a 4-year term. And just understand that I'm one of 5 members. We have our mayor and then 4 council members. And again, thanks for the opportunity to participate, and I look forward to the conversation.
Awesome. Glad to have you here. Hey, go Army.
Hoo-wah.
Nick, you're up.
All right. Well, thank you, Teresa. Good evening, all. So my name is Nick Kaufman. I was born and raised down here in beautiful Leonardtown, Maryland. I was elected to the town council 2 years ago in May of 2020. So this is halfway through my first term. I actually, just a little bit about me, I attended University of Maryland, Baltimore County, UMBC. I had a BA in environmental studies with a minor in political science, and then moved back down home. And actually, I currently work for the Department of Land Use and Growth Management for St. Mary's County for the government. So I actually review over a lot of different types of projects, subdivisions. A lot of times, if you call in and say, hey, I've got a property, what can I do with it? Can I subdivide? Can I build a dwelling on it? Can I build a second house on it? Those are the types of questions we'll answer, and I'll actually interact a lot with the public on a weekly basis. So it's a really neat job, and it's definitely given me a lot of experience and a lot more oversight into the county and how development works. So it's a really neat job, but thank you all. Thanks to the Sierra Club for hosting and allowing me to be able to participate. Happy to be here.
Okay, so UMBC, University of Maryland, Baltimore County. So you're a Maryland guy right here in Maryland, Leonardtown, go UMBC. Shout out to UMBC. All right, so we're going to be talking about sustainable cities and towns tonight. So I really wanted to take an opportunity before we got into our questions to really kind of frame what we mean by sustainable, to hopefully maybe push this conversation in a direction that is viable for the respective towns and cities that we have on this panel tonight. And I want to start just with the definition here. So a sustainable city or town is one designed to address social, environmental, and economic impacts through urban planning and city management. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals are a set of 17 interdependent goals used as a blueprint to help governments build a more sustainable world. So tonight, we're going to talk about some of these individual goals that are directly related to the UN Sustainable Development Goals that they set forth. And one of those goals includes reducing adverse environmental impacts by paying attention to air quality and municipal waste management. Another area that we'll consider in our conversation tonight is utilizing and protecting natural resources to include increasing the tree canopy within cities and towns. Another area we'll talk about is implementing and leveraging opportunities to utilize renewable energy options. That is in municipalities and local governments. Another area we'll talk about is increased access to open and green spaces. And the fifth area that we'll be considering and kind of talking about in our conversation tonight for your respective cities are accessible, affordable, and sustainable transportation systems. So all of these issues are somewhat interconnected, though we're kind of separating them a little bit in conversation to maybe frame the conversation a little bit. But I think it's important to know, as Elizabeth actually pointed out in one of our pre-meetings, she says that all of these issues are interwoven into a larger framework of how we develop sustainable cities and towns, and especially in rural areas like Charles County and St. Mary's County and Coward County. And I also wanted to point out something that was very critical here that I think is important for our listening audience to know. Though we are not really directly addressing the issues of equity tonight as we talk about sustainable towns, and of course, this topic is broad and far-reaching, and all environmental issues have elements of environmental justice. So I think that's important to state, and I think we want to state that right up front. Though we're not talking about it tonight, and we're not talking about equity issues in terms of sustainable development, sustainable towns, walkability, accessibility to transportation and green spaces, we are very aware that these issues are impactful in environmental justice communities, and many of which we have seen right here in the state of Maryland. And the Sierra Club and organizations like the Sierra Club, we're all working to collaboratively address some of these issues and have these conversations in open spaces like this. But tonight, sustainable towns. So we'll get started by talking a little bit about the COVID crisis and dangers and how some of these things impacted us within our respective towns. So did you guys want to add anything else before we get started and start talking a little bit about our topic tonight?
Teresa, thanks for pointing out that these are interconnected, that they're not in silos, even though we're talking that way. It's important to understand they're all connected, and it takes multiple policies and actions to move the ball forward.
Absolutely, absolutely. So this is a little bit of a dynamic conversation because what we do know about sustainable towns and cities all throughout the country and what they're doing is that these things, there's no one size fit all, as Elizabeth actually pointed out. So we're going to talk about some of these things that you guys are doing, and hopefully if there are other towns or communities or cities that are listening to this or may listen to this webinar in the future, that they maybe can learn from us and obtain some best practices, or maybe they'll reach out to some of you and want to do some of the things that you're doing in your respective towns, and partner with you to develop some of these and implement some of these things in their own towns. So tonight we're going to focus on first starting talking about air quality and what that means in sustainable environments in towns and developing sustainable towns. With this crisis of COVID and all of the dangers of pre-existing respiratory illnesses for people all throughout the country, there's been a huge focus on addressing issues that are related to vulnerable communities, especially children. And adults with asthma and lung disease or lung cancers and COPD. So I want to ask you tonight, what are your towns doing to improve local air quality and increase awareness and safety of those who might suffer the most from airborne pollution? So this is a major pillar in sustainable towns. So let's get this conversation started. Elizabeth, or maybe Nick, if you want to jump in and talk a little bit about it, please.
Sure. Thanks, Teresa. So one thing that St. Mary's County has that's very unique is we have a program with the St. Mary's County Health Department. We have air quality monitoring stations throughout the entire county. And for those of you who may not be aware, you can actually go onto the St. Mary's County Health Department website, and I'll walk you through. So when you go on there, you go to a tab, it says community, you click on that, and you'll go down to healthy environment. And a new box will pop up, and you can actually click on air quality monitoring, and that will take you to a new page, and you can actually see all of the stations throughout the entirety of St. Mary's County. And it's very unique because you can see the air quality in the different parts of the county. Obviously, Mechanicsville could be good quality, and then you could go down to an area like Bridge or Leonardtown, and it could be poor quality. And obviously, it's updated every 15 minutes or so. So it's not that it takes it, one time during the day. It's constantly updating. And obviously, we all know Maryland weather changes. It could be freezing in the morning and then hot in the evening. So air quality definitely is constantly changing. But you can see where the stations are at. And it's neat because it takes a lot of different levels of like carbon dioxide, all of these different layers within the atmosphere. And you can actually see the air quality, if it's poor, if it's recommended to go outside. And for a lot of people, they may have illnesses or disabilities. their recommendation is, stay inside, that today's not a good quality day, or, go outside. Today is a beautiful day, the air quality is good. So it's definitely something that is very unique to the county. We've had great success with it. So I definitely encourage everyone, if you have not been onto the website, if you have not checked that out, please take some time to go on there and see that, because you can view it every day. It's there 24/7.
That's excellent. Actually, I want to give a little shout out to St. Mary's County for implementing this program in partnership and in concert with one of our, we say volunteers extraordinaire, Benjamin Hance, who is the chair of the Southern Maryland group for the Sierra Club. This has been one of his baby projects, and he was really excited about partnering with St. Mary's County's Health Department to be able to implement this outdoor air quality sensor program. And it actually measures particulate matter, that's ozone, nitrogen dioxide, and other elements that contribute to poor air quality and respiratory illnesses for all Americans and all of our county residents. So I know that Charles County, I'm in Charles County, by the way. I know that Charles County was actually considering and talking about this program. And we've had conversations, even in some of these forums, with our county commissioner president, Reuben Collins. We talked about this program and this project, and how this county also could benefit from it, or this region could actually benefit from an interconnected air quality monitoring program. So I suspect that places like North Beach and small towns like North Beach and some of the other small towns in our areas could actually benefit from some of these kind of programs with very few small investments in air sensors and air quality monitors that could actually create an interconnected system. So we're really excited to hear what St. Mary's County is doing. Did anybody want to chime in on that?
Yeah, Teresa, you make a good point about monitoring, and I just thought of something when you mentioned COVID. I remember writing in a blog about a year ago at the height of the epidemic, and I remember looking at maps of how different urban areas, the level of air pollution dropped dramatically because people weren't driving their cars and weren't commuting. So now, unfortunately, we're probably have more rise in that, but so it's pretty stark about how it affects traveling to and from work. So it does get back to the issue of trying to promote more local jobs, live near where you work, and that's a big planning issue, I know, in planning circles, to try to do that so you can reduce out commuting. What La Plata does not necessarily, I don't believe we have any quote monitoring stations, but we're approaching it probably, which is a great idea. We're probably approaching from a different tack about health. We have a Parks and Recreation Commission, and we meet monthly, and we're trying to actively do some outreach programs to promote a more healthy La Plata by promoting walking and biking, hopefully building more sidewalks. And in fact, every year, the Maryland Department of Transportation has a month-long celebration called, I'm going to butcher this name, Walktober, where they promote walking throughout the state in the month of October, but they have other partners who try to promote this throughout the year. So our Parks and Recreation Commission is going to reach out and see if we can have these kind of program to promote health and healthy activities throughout the year. And then we've started through the town got a grant from the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay, and they just started this week a tree survey to understand how our tree canopy in the town of La Plata is and how we can make that a much more vibrant and sustainable canopy. So that's underway, and hopefully it'll lead to different policies where we can promote, because obviously trees promotes, cleans the air. And so hopefully we're trying to push for that.
That's awesome. So go ahead. I'm sorry, please, Elizabeth.
Yeah, so I just want to jump in here. So Teresa, one of the things that we use at North Beach as our guidance is the Sustainable Maryland certification that, that's available for every town to do. And so happy to say that we've had that 2 consecutive times. But in there are 7 or 8 categories that they judge each town. And each town is going to have a completely different approach even though some of the solutions are the same, our approaches are going to be different. And as we know, it's a combination of natural as well as technological solutions that the towns can choose from. So in the town of North Beach, one of our major focus for several years now, and it's because we have such a wonderful relationship with the coastline, has been our relationship with nature. And because of that, a lot of our solutions have lend themselves more towards the natural way that we handle stormwater and as baselines. I'm sure we're going to talk about this later on in the discussion because that's part of but I'm saying this to say we haven't really invested in the necessity yet for having monitors. It may have a lot to do with the size of our town. We have not a lot of commuting going on here, except out of the town to get to the major cities. And so we are a tree town. We recently are working on getting our tree town certification. So we have a wonderful canopy, and I'm confident that at some point in the future, this, putting monitors in could become a priority. But right now we have a few other priorities that are pressing. And as you know, in small towns, financials are always important, going after the right grants. And so this is also a really good time to just, as we think about all the other questions coming up, that a comprehensive plan is very, very important, because that comprehensive plan is going to take in what is important to that town and to that region, which of course includes some of the cultural things that you talked about, and equity and having community involvement and all that. So it's not as simple as, oh, we're going to put monitors in and we're going to measure the air quality and then we're going to do this and that. What else do we have going on? Because one solution, trees, could account for several of those points that we're working towards in that certification to the Sustainable Maryland. So just wanted to have everyone understand that a little bit.
Well, that's good. Please go ahead. I'm sorry, Mr. Jenkins.
Thanks, Elizabeth, because you just reminded me that for the first time last fall or last spring, La Plata got recognized as a Maryland Sustainable Community. So that was first time. So not when I was elected. It started long before I ever got here. But the point is, that's a great point. And so we have a committee that's part of our Keep La Plata Beautiful. And we have, you'll love this name, the Green Team Action Plan. And it's a 3-year program to look at policies and actions to continue the sustainable program. So, and we can talk more about that later. So thanks for that reminder.
So it sounds like your towns are actually taking this really serious. So in terms of sustainability, when we talk about sustainability, of course, you know that the first question that someone brings up is construction and development. When we're talking about environmentally friendly environments and making sure that our towns are sustainable and we're doing right by our environment, we always talk about development. And in some people's eyes, it can put a strain on our natural ecosystems. So I wanted to ask you a little bit more about that so that you guys can delve into it and tell me a little bit more about what your local towns, well, what your respective towns are doing to protect the health of your native ecosystems and promote sustainability for planning and land use.
I'll start out. Well, as Elizabeth referred to, we have a comprehensive plan that was updated in 2020. So it's pretty recent. And so we want to make sure that we use the goals and policies, and it talks about sustainability. We've also begun a process to upgrade our zoning ordinance to allow more of a mixed use development, and maybe at some slightly higher densities, but the point is you can have more compact development versus spreading out. And I'll be very upfront by saying, we are faced with a number of pressures, including right now, we have 3 annexation requests that we're going to be dealing with. So that's a huge issue on how we handle that in the future. Stormwater management is a huge issue. And as part of our American Rescue Plan funding, we've developed a fiscal plan on how to use some of those funds. And so we're going to be spending some money, some funds, federal funds, to upgrade our stormwater management facilities on 2 different levels. One is that the town a number of years ago engaged an engineering company and they did a study and prioritized different structures that need upgrading. So we're going to be going through that list with these funds. And also of course, the state has I think they call it a MS4 permit. So we're going to be using those funds to comply with that as well. So that, because stormwater management is a continuing and ongoing issue, and it's very expensive.
Wow.
So we've really taken a very, very assertive role on stormwater management and flooding in our town. For the last 3 or more years, at least, yes, last 3 going into this year, we've put together a stormwater and flood team who are just excellent. Our community members really stood up and formed that committee. We've gone through this very structured, very detailed process to look at exactly what we thought we would need to do, not just for the waterfront, but for the entire town. We're at the phase now, so we're going through different phases. And so we're in the phase now where we're creating that comprehensive plan for stormwater and flood management for the entire town. That we just released our RFPs and got our bidders back. So we'll right then in that process. So after that, then we will be able to work towards doing things like coming up with a flood management plan, which takes, how to get steps to get into that, and all these other plans that are necessary to make sure that we have a sustainable approach to our town, not just the pump systems, which are super important, of course, but also, all the life cycle management, let's put it that way. Because we want to make sure that, 5-10 years down the road, everything's not failing again, and then we're back to square one and everything falls apart. So they're really, really doing an excellent job. In fact, this year, the Maryland planners, recognized them for the outstanding work that they were doing. So we're very, very proud of that team.
That's excellent. And I know in our planning meeting, Elizabeth, you mentioned something about in terms of taking this a little bit further in terms of planning and land use for protecting our ecosystems. You talked about how there needs to be a balance between natural resources and technology that's available to us. Can you talk a little bit about that and what you meant by that?
Well, as I was telling you, I was joking, I go to too many webinars. So, and being a systems engineer,
Me
I'm always
too.
like, okay, what's out there? What can I tinker with now? Who can I drive crazy with this new idea that I'm coming up with? Whoever knows me is probably laughing about that right now. But seriously, the town 3 or 4 years ago, and coming off of the prior mayor, made a dedicated decision to hire a conservationist in our town. We knew that we had a lot of wetlands. We knew that we had a lot of wildlife. We knew we had a lot of those things that we needed to preserve alongside our residents. So we had to really, really, really focus on what we needed to do to create those steps and those foundations that was going to lead to that sustainable plan. But, technology discussion is really about specifications and what you need. It's not hard to understand in your own personal life, right? Choosing the right technology to do the job that you need to do. So again, back to that plan, back to those, and thank you, Councilman Jenkins, for reminding me about the ordinances, about the things that we have to do at that level to make sure that it all works together. It's all these working pieces, and it's very, very challenging to handle. On the equity piece, and I know you said we weren't going to delve into.
No, please,
much,
if you have something to offer.
No, I'm just saying the perspective of who lives in the town and are experiencing that every single day is super important. So whatever we need to do to attract our town residents to be on our committees is really important also.
That's a critical piece in terms of equity and planning, is to have representation, right? So I think that's important. You pointed that out, Mr. David, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and just to add to that comment you made, Elizabeth, it is when we were looking at, and we still are looking at the Main Street program, because we're currently an affiliate member, but we're investigating becoming a full-fledged member. And what I was struck by doing research about this is that uh, in order to be really and get to be successful in your main street or in the town, you really need basically three stools. You need an active government engagement, you need an active citizen engagement, and then you need a business engagement. So your discussion and what you correctly highlighted, it's important to get the citizens engaged because frankly, government can't do it all. And there's a growing movement in the country that solutions are better from the bottom up versus top down. And so I would certainly agree with you there. That's important. And so we're trying to get folks here involved because it's their town. It's not my town. It's their town, and they ought to have
So
a
we're
say
the
in it.
stewards.
Right.
We're the stewards.
Right.
Right.
That's our responsibility.
If I may, if I can jump in, from what David and Elizabeth talked about, Leonardtown, for anyone who's, down here in St. Mary's County, especially Leonardtown, we are the fastest growing municipality in the entire state of Maryland. And anyone who's been in town can easily see that there's tons of new subdivisions and homes popping up. So obviously, we're growing. It doesn't look like that's going to be changing anytime soon. So one aspect that we just dealt with recently is it's called the Tudor Hall project. Some people might be familiar with it, but for those who are not, if you actually go down to Leonardtown Wharf, for those who've been down there, you can actually get on to Breton Bay. And then if you go all the way up to the Port of Leonardtown Winery, because they have a kayak launch out there, that whole property is eventually going to be developed. Now, it's not something that's going to happen overnight. We had some people reach out and say, oh, it's going to be done in a year. No, it's going to be like 2 decades before this is potentially completely finished. But we had the consultants come down about 2 weeks ago. They gave a presentation. Anyone who, if you have not seen that, you can actually go onto the town website and watch that. And a lot of what we talked about are the ideas, the first beginning steps of what do we want to do with this property. There's a lot of new ideas, maybe a new hotel, an amphitheater, but there's also a lot of sustainability with this property. Some of the property is FIDS, and that stands for Forest Interior Dwelling Species. So it's bird habitat. And that property, thankfully, can never be developed. It doesn't matter, what happens down the road, that property will be preserved permanently. So that part of that property will be preserved. So we're trying to really focus on, okay, we want to do this right. We want the project to be done successfully where we can allow more people to come in, but at the same time we're not just developing and clear cutting every tree on the property. So it's a work in progress. It's something that we want the public's input on. We had a full house when they first came down. We will have more opportunities for the public to come in and say, hey, I have concerns. I don't want to see this. I want to see the property developed in a certain way. We are going to looking at trails on the property. A lot of people have asked about that. So when you talk about land use and obviously working for the county, it's a tough aspect to deal with because there's a lot involved. There's a lot of local regulations. There's state regulations you have to abide by when you're in the critical area. There's even more regulations. So it's a lot you have to go with. And one of the best things that we can work with is public input. We want the public to say, hey, we don't like this idea. We love this idea. Why? Tell us, because that's what we need to know. That's what we're basing this off of. So it's always, great when we have more people come out, email, phone calls, text messages, let us know, what you're thinking. So that way we can better prepare for the future.
There was a question posed in the chat from Miss Cindy Peel to you, Nick. And her question reads, as a new Leonardtown resident, I see a lot of new home subdivisions being built. Where are new trees being planted to restore the mature trees that were cut to allow for the new subdivisions? So she's really talking about tree canopy and replacing that.
Right. So a lot of what we have done, every subdivision that comes through has to address forest conservation. That is per the state law, whether it's a town project or even a county project. So a lot of what they have to do, these developers can pay fees in lieu. A fee in lieu will actually go to the state. And those are actually, that money is taken for various projects, not just in Leonardtown or in the county, but statewide, forest restoration, new tree plantings. But we also did, and thank you to Ben Hance, if he's on here watching, he actually did a tree planting just last year at the Port of Leonardtown Winery. That was very successful. I think about 30, 40 people came out. It was a beautiful day. Even amid COVID, everyone was able to stay safe. but we planted a number of trees down there, and we are looking at more. I know I've been in contact with him about doing some more tree plantings in the future. And certainly, for Leonardtown, it's a great question because, she's right. We do have a lot of new homes in development, but forest conservation is addressed on these properties. And one of our newer developments coming on, it's called Meadows at Town Run Phase 2. It's actually another, potential subdivision that's coming through, but most of the forest on that property, and it's well over 100 acres, is actually going to be permanently protected. The way the developer worked with us, with the council, with the mayor, he originally wanted to develop it entirely, and we were quick to say, no, we want this preserved. And there were some neighbors and such who also had some opposition to it as well. So we were able to address those concerns. So all of that forest, almost 90% of it, is going to be retained, and it's going to be permanently protected. So it's little things like that that we are working towards. But with these new homes, some forest is being cut down, and so forest conservation is being addressed for these properties. And we look forward to, certainly doing more tree plantings in the future. There's plenty of opportunities and some spaces within Leonardtown that we can do that. So I'm certainly hopeful that, more tree plantings will come online.
Wonderful. Elizabeth, did you have anything else that you wanted to add to this area as we're talking about these options for how far we can take it and what we're currently doing?
No, it's fine. Thank you so much for asking. I think we can move on to the next question. If you're fine.
Sure. All right. So we're talking about an area that I think is quite interesting. So I want to talk about waste management and composting. I think that this is a fascinating topic, and it's a very new area of education for me. So one of the more critical areas in the sustainability and managing sustainable towns and cities, or getting to that point where we are, is how we manage and handle our waste. That includes reducing our waste footprint, and making sure that we're reducing with recycling and composting. So what is your town doing to create a more sustainable waste management plan? And how would you like to see it improved in the future?
Well, I can, if I can start. So, Leonardtown doesn't have any specific programs to date. We have been looking at some of the other towns. I know La Plata and Chesapeake Beach, North Beach, but we've also, a lot of what we can do is not just even programs that the town or the county has, but just every impact that we do in our daily lives. I mean, going in and just, turning the lights off when you leave a room, replacing, light bulbs with more efficient LED bulbs. I mean, it seems kind of common sense. It seems like not a big deal. What's the difference in that? But when everybody does it, it makes a huge difference. I know California actually they passed a law, I believe it was last year, that now anytime you're putting in a shower, you have to install low flow shower heads. So it's actually conserving water. So it's little things like that. And I know that even you can go to some hardware stores like Lowe's and actually buy those and replace them. And it saves, you can still take a shower, but you're saving water, you're conserving that. And especially with the future and droughts seem to be more common nowadays, everything that we can do to conserve, our energy and water, all of our natural resources is critical, and it's vital.
I think in one of our previous discussions, Elizabeth made a great point that recycling and waste management is about economics. I mean, and I frankly didn't quite fully appreciate that until I got elected, because we had to change our recycling, our trash. The town collects waste and we also recycle, but we had to change our contractor because they didn't want to pick up cardboard or paper products anymore. And we had an outpouring of folks saying they would like us to continue that. So we ended up changing our contractor, and now we have resumed that good service. How long it'll last, we're not sure yet, but at least there was a need to continue to pick up cardboard and paper products. So that happens. So that's a good program. We're all going to be looking at our purchasing policies as part of this Green Team Action Team program. We want to go back and look at that. And then I don't know how much, maybe that's the next question, but and I think, Nick, you begin to talk about it. I'm in the town, we have street lights and they're through SMECO. So I'm curious, And I know in certain neighborhoods where in the town, they are replacing the bulb. So I'm hopefully they'll go back and replace all of them with LEDs, which is a little more efficient, but also brighter. So, because I've gotten some questions from residents about that as well. So we should probably do more. And then I remembered something in a previous question that's important here, I think, or maybe
Please.
other questions
Please.
is the fact that the town we're going to be getting a briefing in April about the potential of reusing water, gray water. At one time, Charles County had a very aggressive program. And so we're going to see if we can reactivate that and see what options we have in the town will play as a way to sustain that valuable resource, which is groundwater. So hopefully we'll know more in the next month or so.
There is a conversation that's going on kind of behind the scenes about Charles County putting forth an idea for a countywide industrial composting program for food and yard waste. I'm excited to hear about this because I think that this is leaps and bounds in the right direction of how we address our waste. We know that historically that landfills have issues with methane, gas being leached from that place. So nobody wants to live next to it. We don't really quite frankly know how to deal with it. And recycling is one option. But recycling our food and yard waste is another great way of moving in a direction of sustainability for our town and our county, as the towns and our respective county as a whole. So I'm excited to hear more about this as Charles County unravels this. Again, I'm in Charles County. I know very little about this, but it is one thing that I did want to put out there for our county residents that may in fact be listening to this. Is the town of North Beach doing anything remotely close to?
Yes, yes, thank you, Teresa. I wanted to, before I discuss what we're doing, just kind of leverage off this point that Councilman Jenkins made earlier, that it has to be a bottoms up as well as a top down approach. So when we're talking about having a waste management program, that's really top down. Before you can even get to that, you have to take a look at what's really happening. And 2020 was such an excellent time for town of North Beach to take a look at what was really happening, because everybody was home and our waste management, obviously, needs actually went up. So that brought to light a couple different things. We got a lot of feedback from our waste management company. And so we really started to take a dedicated look. We have an environmental committee who's taking a look at this, I guess, again, in the context of how we're going to address this through the Sustainable Maryland Award. And not just economic driven, that's definitely the thing, but we really want to look at a market driven report. So what's really happening in the market, because sometimes some recyclable categories are accepted and sometimes they're not. And so, and that directly affects everybody in the chain, from the person putting the person in their trash, from the person picking it up, the center that's recycling it, and it just goes on and on and on. And ultimately, if that's not handled, where it ends up is in the pocket of the individual resident. And that's really not what we want to have happen. That's not stewardship to the people that we're representing in our town. So we're taking a close look at that and identifying exactly what it is that we want to do. Now, at one point in our history, we handled recycling, and we know that recycling drives down the cost of waste management. We do know that. From the different fees and everything else that we have to pay. So we want to make sure that everyone really understands that when they put something in that bin, what it's going to cost the town and what it's going to cost them. We're not doing analysis paralysis. We're moving out. We have Earth Day coming up, and we have a lot planned for Earth Day. And to begin educating our community as to what it is that we need to do. Our waste management contract comes up within the next year. It will be the next administration, because this is our election year for us. But the matter of the fact is we really need to understand what those specifications and requirements are going to be and where we can create those win-win situations for the person who's going to be collecting our waste as well as our residents. So that's kind of the way we are looking at waste management right now. We're very comprehensive as without holding up everybody's process. The other thing on composting is we are talking, myself and our community conservationists, a lot about how we want to approach composting. So during the last round of Maryland Sustainability, we received points for having a community garden. The thing about our very small town, it is very challenging to have a community garden of any size that's going to be sustainable for all the residents in the town. So the next best thing is, well, how do you go to supporting people who want to do their own gardening in their own yard? Composting. So if we can figure out how to compost and support every single person in the town that wants to compost, I think that'll go a very long way. The other thing I always hear about composting, and maybe you guys getting too much about composting.
No,
the biggest
please.
complaint I get about composting is it stinks. It really stinks, I'm like going, yeah, but guess what? It's science, guys. If you don't get the right mixture of brown and everything else, you're going to have stinky composting. Guess what? We have an abundance of in North Beach because we have trees. We have leaves. So if we can just figure out how to use those leaves, we might be able to come up with a really good program. So we're going to leave that one for the fall and maybe the next year. But right now, we're really focused on figuring out what we need to do for our 2,000 residents here to make sure that we're getting the best value for them on their recycling and their waste management.
That's awesome. It sounds like it really is about an education, right? So broad and sweeping education, not just for the residents, but really for our government, really. So this is an education for us. This is new. This science is old, but for us to do it on a major scale is new. I wanted to present something that Mr. Mark Inlay said. He presented something in terms of sustainable towns and conservation. He said, PG County is now doing exactly what National Institutes of Health did by replacing the public lawns with native plant meadows. This saves a great deal of money because they only mow once a year. So that may be something that that you as individual towns can consider in when you are planning and considering what your landscapes are going to look like and how you manage that. I'm sure some of your staff that are doing land management and area management would be comfortable with not having to mow every week.
Let me just add that what Elizabeth mentioned about community gardens, that is actually one of the action items in our Green Team Action Plan is community gardens. In fact, right in my neighborhood, there's a gentleman and his wife, they are composting and are raising vegetables. And I just, maybe this is just a power of suggestion, but I see and sense there's a lot more interest in that because of the pandemic, and folks, want fresh food and they want, and they want to buy it local. So I really do see an uptick in that. And I know North Beach has it, and Leonardtown doesn't. We have a farmer's market, and it has, it reopened after being closed for a while. But my point is, these are extremely popular, and we've seen an uptick in the amount of vendors who come to our farmers market, which will start up probably next month. So I just see an uptick and a really interest in growing your own vegetables and community gardens.
I want to actually add something to this, and I think that this is a great time to really say this. And I'm sure Benjamin Hance, who is the chapter chair for the Sierra Club Southern Maryland group, they are actually working on doing a pretty grand sized community garden over in St. Mary's County in the Lexington Park area, in one of the parks over there. So this is coming. Also, Ben has been actually going throughout Southern Maryland and installing small community gardens for some of the local churches. I know for sure that he's done about 2 of them that I know for sure that I participated in here in Charles County. So though maybe particularly in your respective areas, you may not be able to get community gardens that can be managed by on a large scale, but these smaller community gardens are going in with churches that have community outreach programs that are directly giving food to the community. So maybe perhaps, Elizabeth, if there are opportunities that Ben can, and the Sierra Club of Southern Maryland can partner with you and the Council of North Beach to help find and identify community organizations and groups, and particularly maybe churches who could see some value in getting this community garden. They use good organic soil as well. And these are raised beds. So, you know, the labor and the actual cost of the actual community garden materials to start it off are provided through the Sierra Club as a donation. So we think that this is a major highlight in our ability to actually partner with organizations and to give back directly to the community for things that are a direct need, especially, you know, like you said, David, during the pandemic, people wanted fresh fruit and vegetables. This is an opportunity. So I'm sure that someone from the Sierra Club would love to be able to reach out to you.
Yeah, I
Thank
mean,
you.
I think it's a great idea, churches. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
I actually kind of like, if I could jump in for a hot second, I
Please.
liked the idea about doing like the meadows on like sides of the highway. I know a lot of states, especially out in the Midwest, they have done that and they've actually found great success. They've saved money. You're not cutting as often, but it's also a lot of the program has been focused on the monarch butterfly, try and restore those populations, planting swamp milkweed and a variety of other flowers, particularly native species at that. So it's definitely something that I would be interested in Leonardtown. I don't know, you know, if Ben, if you're, you know, on, please, you know, reach out to me about that, because that would be something that would be neat to do in the town. I mean, Leonardtown's beautiful when you come in anyways, for anybody who's been in town before. So it'd be neat. And it really is a great opportunity to utilize, instead of just a lawn, you can actually plant native species, bringing in, you know, butterflies and a variety, and it's beautiful. And it's very attractive. And it's, from an economic standpoint, it actually can raise your property values for your home. So it's a win-win no matter how you look at it.
Yeah, we're excited about the ability to be able to even talk about some of these kinds of things that that the Sierra Club of Southern Maryland is doing. You know, there are a lot of great volunteers who are willing to actually get involved directly in your communities. So the Southern Maryland group represents all 3 of your counties. So Charles County, Calvert, as well as St. Mary's. So this is a great opportunity to actually engage in those charity community gardens, and to make sure that if you guys have some individual organizations that you think could benefit from this and that will be able to manage them on an ongoing basis, we'd love to hear from them. You can actually check our chat, and there are some contact information there. Regarding the meadows, I think Mr. Mark Imlay actually put that in the chat and gave that piece of information to you, Nick.
Awesome.
So Mark, as you know, Councilman Colvin is with Leonardtown. If you'd like to reach out to him to talk a little bit more about it and maybe possibly educate him on it, please reach out to him.
And then,
I'm glad we're having this discussion. This is what it's for.
And then just real quick, you know, we're also promoting the planting of native species and not foreign stuff. And I'm not a real expert in that, but I know our green team's been working at it. And at one time we had a pilot project with the Southern Maryland Audubon Society that probably didn't turn out the way we wanted it, but we still want to push forward and really promote native species.
Right.
Yeah, I wanted to take a moment also to maybe highlight some of the things that some of our folks in that are attendees tonight are saying and adding. One thing is information or a comment directly to you, David. The person is anonymous. They said, I think the town of La Plata is a bird city. Does it address dark skies and light pollution? The LED lights can ruin night skies for migratory birds. So that sounds like that's a comment as well as a request, particularly sounds like it's mixed in there.
I saw it and I actually texted back to the gentleman, and we are a bird city, and I don't know the answer to that question, but I'll find out. But that's a good point about nightlight. I had not really thought of that. Thank you.
All right. And someone else actually also added that Ocean City just started a composting program, and it is significantly nicer smelling than incinerator and landfills when it's done correctly. So that's good to know that, like, when it's done the right way, we get enough of those leaves in there, Elizabeth. We won't have the stench. We won't have the stench of decomposing food and organic matter. So I also want to give present another question here. Though the concept of sustainable communities clearly incorporates the economic health of towns, we still hear business owners oppose environmental initiatives because of the cost that they associate with them. Are there any practices to bring the business community into the sustainability movement? And that came from Sandra Raviv. So
I can take that one. And I'm going to take that one in the context of what's upcoming. So we have sat down now and taken a really close look at the next juncture for our Sustainable Maryland Award is in 2024. Not that far away, it's 22. I know, and that time goes by very quickly. And so one of the initiatives there is having a green business certification program. So we're going to be looking at that very carefully on what we need to do and what's involved in getting a green certification program for those businesses in our county. You know, we were joking about the straws before we got on air, and that's one of the biggest complaints around here. And as a business person, I'm going to tell you that it's very, very, very challenging for a government to come in and tell us. So, you know, I got these two hats now, right? So as a business person, it's very hard for a government to come in, to listen to a government to come in and tell us how we need to do our business plans for our profitability. It's very, very challenging. It's almost like beating your head against the wall if you're the government person. And I know that we've tried quite a lot in North Beach in the past years to get some of our businesses to make that transition. So we do know we need to solve some of those problems. We're going to leverage though what the state is showing us we should be looking at instead of just trying to make this up as we go. So we are going coming into 2024, you know, we're looking at things that we are already doing, what we can bolster those, and what new initiatives we can take on. Also, we're a small town, small staff, small resources, have to go after money, all of that rolled into one. But green business certification is really high on our list. So I hope that helps the answer.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's part of our Green Team Action Plan. I forget, I'm not sure what year. We have a 3-year program, and I have to double check, but it's, I know I was looking at it this afternoon. It isn't one of our action items.
Okay. All right. So is there anything else that you guys wanted to talk about, especially about businesses? Is there anything? I think, and of course, when we're talking about composting on a large scale, we're really going to be targeting businesses within our local municipalities, like trying to get them to really participate in the composting program, right? So there's really going to be a large push in trying to ensure that the restaurants in our respective jurisdictions are really comfortable with engaging in the composting programs.
Yeah, and I just thought of something. I know several buildings in the Plata, including our town hall, which is behind me. When they built that 10, 11 years ago, it was LEED certified. So I'm curious to know how many more buildings in the Plata have been built that are LEED certified. I know that's a pretty comprehensive checklist to get that certification at different levels. But again, I think, Elizabeth, you talked about it. It is an education program to try to incentivize businesses to look at that. And I would say, given the price of oil that's even more important today than ever, is to really look at that issue to reduce that dependency, but also helps with the air quality issue as well.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I was going to bring that up. Like a lot of the things that we've done in the past really speak to this energy topic. And, we have municipal vehicles that are electric vehicles. We have solar panels on our buildings, so that's renewable energy. We have charging stations in public places for electric vehicles. I do know that there's quite a bit of population. I don't know what the number is. I don't know that of people in the town who are driving electric vehicles. I think they're just very, very conscious minded anyway of the environment. So residential heating efficiency is an area that I think we have a healthy homes program. We're providing resources for people low-income homes who qualify. We have quite a few homes here, where we have a lot of elder people in our town and a lot of children. So we do have a lot of people. So we're doing quite a bit in the area of energy. I'm pretty proud of. And so, yeah, again, and to David's point, it's speaking to air quality also. So,
That's excellent. That's an excellent. I'm glad you brought up energy efficiency and the programs that you're doing in North Beach, because that's the area that I actually want to talk about and transition to, because energy generation is the second largest contributor to greenhouse gases in Maryland. And the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change states that to avert the most dire consequences of climate change, the energy sector needs to be decarbonized by 2030. This 2030 number really is not just about what's happening here in Maryland. We've seen the UN actually presenting this targeted date as a goal for the world. So Maryland is right on target with trying to meet this goal, but things need to be done. So I wanted to ask you guys, what actions do you hope to see from your town to transition to clean and renewable energy sources? What would you hope to see? What's already being done? What kinds of things can you help to facilitate that as councilmen and women in your respective counties and jurisdictions?
So one thing, certainly all the towns we can all work on is, installing like rooftop solar. I did bring the issue to the mayor and the council for Leonardtown. So I'm hoping to bring that back. It wasn't really discussed at that time, but I'm hopeful that maybe, even just putting a couple, panels on the town hall building, and just it's usually once someone does it, that's when others become interested. It's kind of like, oh, I see what someone else does. I want to do that too. So I'm hopeful that, maybe in the coming, next few years, we can actually get some rooftop solar in Leonardtown and hopefully really work to increase that. But one thing, we've done too, is we've really been working with State Highway Administration to try to get more sidewalks put in, really trying to increase the walkability for Leonardtown. Anyone who's been down here, you'll notice that we actually put out new wayfinding signage to try to show people where you can park, and it really has helped tremendously. A lot more people are walking throughout town, and we're trying to encourage that, especially for some of our newer neighborhoods, to not have to drive. Granted, it's only a mile or so, but encouraging them to walk, taking cars off the road. It's not only increasing the efficiency of the highways, but it's also bringing down that pollution, because if you're not driving a vehicle, not only are you getting the health benefits of walking to town and walking home, you're also increasing the safety aspect, because if you'd like to go in town and grab a drink or two on a Friday night, now you're not risking driving home. Even you might say, oh well, I'm just a mile away from home. No, don't do it. Play it safe. So being able to just increase that walkability, keeping people safe on the roads. So State Highway Administration, we've been working with them trying to get the sidewalks added. So that's just one aspect of in Leonardtown that we're trying to work on and really trying to increase. And I think it is slowly but surely, it is starting to pay off.
To be upfront, La Plata as a town needs to do more with respect to energy reduction. But I have noticed a lot of residents here in the town have rooftop systems on their roofs. I've noticed a lot more. And I'm not an expert, but I'm curious, and we should probably, meaning the town, perhaps we should do a better job of outreaching to SMECO to see how they're providing energy as well. I do know they have a fairly large solar farm down near Hughesville, but I'm just curious if they're at one time going to be committing to other sources of energy and whether that'll be passed on to us as consumers. So we need to do a better job of that. And I would just piggyback to what Nick just said about more walkability. That's something we really need to pursue within the town. And in fact, part of our ARPA funding, we're going to be hopefully funding the construction of some other sidewalks. One large project we're working on right now, as a matter of fact, because we got state money, is do about a two and a half mile walkway that would go from St. Charles Parkway down Radio Station Road next to a subdivision, and then down through all the way into downtown La Plata, and then would connect up with a middle and elementary school in the town. So we're working on that project as we speak. And that does a great thing because it'll provide connection to two parks, a county park, a town park, provides walkability to the Board of Education headquarters, a high school and an elementary school, and then it connects residential neighborhoods. And then eventually that will connect up with the existing hiker bikeway along St. Charles Parkway. So that's a great opportunity to really promote walkability. So we're moving forward with that. It's not cheap, but we are moving forward with it.
So in Southern Maryland, we're all using SMECO. So there is an option. There's an option that you can choose as an individual, and our government entities can also choose the option to receive all of their generation from renewable energy sources. So this is an option that actually it's now literally something you can click. Again, a great big shout out and thanks to the Sierra Club of Southern Maryland for working with SMECO to get that done and to have that as an option for each one of us to be able to make that choice if in fact we can or would like to. Also, the town of Indian Head has opted to go 100 renewable energy. So we think that this is a fantastic thing that Indian Head has decided to do this by 2030. They made the pledge. And the pledge that I'm referring to really is the Ready for 100 campaign pledge. So the Sierra Club also has a pledge that government and municipalities can really opt to be powered by affordable, community-based and 100% clean and renewable sources of energy. And this is something that approximately 180, if I'm not mistaken, 180 individual communities have chosen this option for their respective jurisdictions. So we're really excited about this program and the opportunity for our municipalities to consider this. Charles County as well, which is of course Indian Head, the town of Indian Head is in Charles County, but they're a separate local government. But the county has been discussing this pledge participation, and they're willing to, they've actually had conversations with the Southern Maryland group of Sierra Club with going 100% renewable by 2025. So I'm excited to say that. Again, I'm in Charles County. Of course, David, you're here in Charles County as well. So if in fact any of you are actually in our listening audience listening to this conversation about Ready for 100, we'd love for you to educate yourself on it and to reach out to the Southern Maryland group. We have a great volunteer, Brandon Smith, who is leading this effort. And if you want to help to advocate for this in your respective jurisdictions, please join this conversation and this cause to help us reach out to ensure that our respective counties are jumping on board with this conversation and this actual pledge. So we want to make this happen. So this is an option, but it's an option to move us in the right direction of a sustainable community in town. So did anybody else have anything to add about that?
I will add, David, I kind of like piggyback off of what you mentioned, just talking about SMECO, and every time I get my SMECO bill, I do like this option that now they'll actually show your energy usage and how it changes throughout the year. And and they'll give a number of tips about, okay, obviously turning the lights off, things of that nature that you can do to reduce your energy and, bring your bill down. But I really enjoy having that each month when I get my bill, because then I can see obviously the fluctuations during the year, and usually during the warmer months when it's nicer weather, I can leave my windows open. I don't have to run my unit. But at the same time, when it's winter, it's colder out, or during the summer when it's hot, and you're running your air, your AC or your heat. And so you can see how your energy can just go up and down. But likewise, just changing out a couple bulbs or doing little things like that can actually make a difference. It's minor, it's small, but it does add up over the year. And then one other comment I wanted to add, I see Cindy wrote had a statement. She talked about parking lot solar. That's something that, is it's unique, and it's something that is, I think, even better than just putting solar out on, undeveloped land, because now you're taking that land use away. When you can utilize existing infrastructure, putting it on rooftops, the rooftop serves no purpose. It's, so now you can actually put, rooftop, the solar panels on top of that. Now you're getting, free energy. It's actually more direct sunlight. So it's a win in that case. And there's also a lot of towns I know, that a lot more major cities that have actually been doing not just rooftop solar, but they've actually been putting plants on top of these, these buildings, and it actually helps to cool the building down. So it's really neat. There's a lot of opportunity, I think, going into the near future with, it's amazing what you can do with technology nowadays. But it's amazing what we have accomplished so far, and the potentials that we have going in the future. I think there's really a lot of opportunity to really improve the environment and help it in ways that we could have never imagined 20 or 30 years ago.
Okay. That's a great
I
point.
just have to, I
Go ahead.
just have to throw in that we do actually have a green roof on our town hall that we're kind of proud of.
That's awesome. That's awesome to know. So, Elizabeth, you did actually bring up charging stations regarding your town, the town of North Beach. So you did kind of mention that. So I want to talk a little bit about transit and accessibility, which of course is a major pillar in sustainable communities and towns. So we all know that the prices of gas is it's just out of control. It's been out of control lately. So people are opting more for affordable options and more economic ways of getting around and sustainable modes of transportation. But a lot of our towns that we live in, especially because we all live in rural areas, were really, the planning was centered around car driving and car mobility rather. I just wanted to ask you guys tonight, what are your towns doing to make themselves accessible to residents without cars? And how can we improve this in the future?
That's the million-dollar question, because unfortunately we are a car-centric society, particularly down here. So turning that ship will take some time and effort, but for instance, where we are, and I think perhaps in North Beach as well, maybe in Leonardtown, but so the county runs a bus system called Vango, and we have several stops here in town, so that helps. There's a park and ride lot within the town limits, so that hopefully will promote carpooling. And then there's, within a 10-minute drive, there's one in Waldorf. And for those who don't really know this, Southern Maryland has the largest commuter bus system in the state, because they serve all 3 Southern Maryland counties to go in to work locations. But the key in the future will be trying to create jobs where you live, work where you live. And so, and the way to do that is create places. And by creating places, I refer to create mixed use zoning. So you have different housing types. You have businesses with residential on top of it. You create more dense, not Manhattan, but more density. So you have different housing choices. And so hopefully then people can walk or bike, or they minimize car use. But those kind of policies will take some time. But I know in the Plata, we've started to change our zoning ordinance to reflect the policies in our new comprehensive plan. And just one quick note, we have a large project that was annexed into the town 30 years ago, and it is now actually starting construction. And perfect blunt about it, I didn't think it would ever happen, but they are. And so and it's a new owner. They're builders from out of the area completely. And so they have modified to a certain degree the original plan because they've reduced the size of the interconnecting roadways because they were going to be four-lane divided roads. And now they're going to make them 2 lanes and divided and have traffic circles and landscaping and sidewalks throughout the community. And that does multiple things. It slows down the traffic. So it's not going to be hopefully a cut through for people going through the town. But at the same token, it slows the traffic down and makes it more of a residential area. Again, tree canopy, and then try to promote walking. There'll be a large open space throughout the project that's adjacent to Clark's Run and the floodplain. So my whole point is hopefully this will be an example, hopefully a good example of some better planning to create better places. And because it's going to be unfortunately a long-term solution because of down here, we don't have a whole lot of options for transit. But that also includes being able, and I think, Teresa, you referred to it earlier, trying to help some of our more challenged citizens here in La Plata. We have a community that we've really tried to help in terms of providing all kinds of services in terms of recreational needs and transportation needs and other health services. So we're engaged with a program, a partnership with that local community. And we have a community center, and we're trying to get some funds to expand that community center as well. In fact, we're going to use hopefully some of our ARPA money to do that.
That's excellent. Nick, did you want to talk about some of the cool transportation things that are going on in your area?
Yeah, absolutely. So, David, as you mentioned, we all talked about walkability and trying to promote that and increase that. One thing that Leonardtown has, it's very unique. We started this last year. We have a trolley system. Some of you who are down the county, maybe you've ridden it, but it was a trial and run last year. It is still this year, but it was very successful. So the Inn at Leonardtown, it's a new hotel, actually owns these. I believe they have 3, maybe 4 trolley cars, and we worked out a deal with them last year. So we had them going on like First Fridays and some of the major holidays and major events, Christmas on the Square, our Veterans Day parade. And they were going to a number of the neighborhoods, some of the newer neighborhoods like Leonard's Grant and Clark's Rest. And it was immensely successful. We got great feedback from it, but it was really an opportunity for people to be able to get on this trolley, come into Leonardtown, into the downtown square, be able to walk around, take their kids, their families, grab a bite to eat, or just visit town and not have to drive. And it was taking cars off the road. It was a wonderful program. We're excited to have that back. We were working on our budget recently, and that is going to be a part of the budget, is having those trolleys available. And we're actually looking to expand that this year again, hopefully it's another trial and run, making sure that people still will use it and utilize it. But I think it's going to be great, and it really has helped out taking off more vehicles off the road. And people, it's an opportunity too for young couples and people with kids. Maybe they get a night out on the town, they don't have to worry about driving, and it also increases safety because now you're on this trolley system. You don't have to worry about driving out. Nowadays it seems like you always hear about accidents. So it's any way that you don't have to drive, you can be safe by walking or using a public transportation system is always, I think, beneficial, and it's great for the environment too. So it's a win. But Leonardtown is we're very excited about that. We had a great trial run last year, and we're really looking forward to this year. It's going to be wonderful. So certainly if you're down here in town, make sure to hop a ride on the trolley, because it's a lot of fun, and it's really neat to be able to ride on that.
That's exciting. Elizabeth, did you want to talk a little bit about what's going on in your
Yeah,
area?
our major focus right now is on walkable community. We are partnering with our sister city, Twin City, Chesapeake Beach. They have a pretty robust committee over there that they've been looking at walkability, and so now we're working with them so that we can do signage, wayfarers, on our trails, and safety, street crossings. Those are the types of things. We're a very, very, very walkable community. Most of our residents walk. Actually, all our residents walk everywhere. So we're really looking, again, at the community conservation point of view, like, how do we make our trails better? So it's very, very interesting because even though it's in the transportation sphere for us, it's really in health and wellness. And health and wellness is an area within the sustainability where they have specific things that goals that they really would like us to achieve. So as far as the transit system goes, we have very good support, as David said before, through MTA. Calvert County has a really nice network. I believe that I've used it myself on occasion when I don't feel like driving and I have the leisure of the time to try hurry up to get to where I needed to go. So I think, our challenge in the town is parking. We're a tiny town. We have a lot of visitors all the time. And we have so many debates as long as I've been living here since 2003 that I've been hearing about. And what are we going to do for parking? Those tall parking structures just won't work for us. So we'll have to see how all of that comes together. But basically, I think we're okay on the transportation.
Just two quick points real quick. You remind me of something, Elizabeth. The town has retained a planning transportation consulting firm that's on call for us. And so they're working on 3 different things. I mentioned the hiker biker trail that they're working on. They're also working on within the town, they're looking on a town street and corridor where we've had some issues with accidents. So they're working on creating a different streetscape. And then we have a committee of our green team that's working on and making a proposal to create art as part of pedestrian crossings and the pavement marking, pavement art. And so I'm hoping we can promote some kind of a demonstration project in one of our street corridors to promote street crossings, pedestrian crossings with art, because I know it's been tried in other towns and communities across the country. So that's another way in terms of not only creating walkability, but also safety issues and also, frankly, slowing down the traffic. I think we still need to worry about that as well.
That's awesome. I wanted to see if I can get a few either comments or questions from our audience in here before we end for the night, because we're getting close to our time to say goodbye. So one comment, it is a question, but I'll pose it as a comment. So Mark Imlay said, we should promote carpooling, right? So how can we promote carpooling was the question, but that's an excellent recommendation, and it's a throwback to the early 90s and the early 2000s, where we were talking a lot about carpooling. So that's a good option, especially in the Southern Maryland region. I want to go back to some information that Mark actually noted. He said that Senator Ellis, who is a senator that represents Charles County, advocates for forests and parks in the areas in Waldorf that do not have them now. So he is correct about that. So a shout out to our Senator Ellis for Charles County. There is a question here that was posed to Nick, and it's related to St. Mary's County. He says, Thomas King said that since we're discussing air quality, is anything being done regarding the lack of emissions inspections in St. Mary's? I actually took my car to the VEIP station, the VEIP station in Prince Frederick to get inspection, and they would not let me do it. And the reason given was because something about 50-year-old legislation rule, yada, 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 areas not needing to have it done. So he's wondering if you're going to get the vehicle emissions inspection program stations in St. Mary's County. So that is a question. If you want to just maybe.
To be honest, I can't answer that question right now. I'm gonna have to do some research and look into that. I can certainly reach out to the county commissioners as well and see, what are the options. If I believe we have some emission stations here in the county, but again, I'll do that research and get back to him. So Thomas, I will get back to you with that information once I find that answer for you.
Okay. There is just one last comment I want to make before we say our goodbyes. There was Debbie Crawling who put a note and she made comments about the airport, the expanding airport here in Charles County and the exposure to minors at the J.C. Parks and Matthew Henson schools, which they're calling Ground Zero schools, that are going to be exposed to more emissions and jet fuel emissions from the airplanes flying in and out of Charles County. What I would say to you, Ms. Crawling, please reach out to our county commissioners. Please let your concerns be known in writing. It's very important and critical as they are considering these changes and modifications to our comprehensive plan and what these things mean and how you feel about them. So I would recommend that you actually ensure that you get involved in that conversation. So I also want to make sure that we say thank you to all of our guests who are listening tonight. We want to make sure that you are involved in this conversation and getting involved in this conversation in ways that are beneficial not only to yourselves, but to our respective counties here in the Southern Maryland region. Please reach out to your respective towns if you have concerns about things that are happening directly in your community. These are your elected officials. These are the people that you cast ballots for to ensure that they represent you. They're here tonight. They're willing to talk about and engage in these issues in public, and they want to hear from you. I think you've heard David, as well as Elizabeth and Nick say that we want to hear back from our respective constituents and how we can do this better. They're not claiming to have all of the answers tonight, and they're willing to grow and go along in the process with you. So please take a moment. We also want to thank Sierra Club of Southern Maryland for hosting this tonight. Please, if you are willing, we'd love to hear feedback from you and for you to get involved in our respective conversations, volunteer opportunities by reaching out to the Sierra Club of Southern Maryland. That information will be on our final slide when we say goodnight tonight. There are pieces of information that was put into our chat boxes. And you can contact or look up these respective towns and cities on the internet. So before we close tonight, I want to give you a little bit of an impromptu closure. I'm going to start a sentence and I want you guys to end it. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so sustainable cities are, and I want you to give your closing statements, and you have about 30 to 45 seconds to give your closing statements. I want you to continue that sentence with your respective thoughts about sustainable cities and towns. Sustainable cities and towns or towns are. David, I'll start with you really quick.
Oh, thanks a lot. No, thank you. Sustainable towns are engaged. They have an integrated approach to sustainability, not in silos. And it's also providing education to our community about the need for sustainability.
All right. Sustainable towns and cities are, Nick.
They are productive, they are effective, and they are open. One thing is they need to be, willing to take on new leadership, take on new projects and opportunities, listening to the public, learning about what can be done, what works for the environment, and what we can do to conserve our natural resources and be able to progress into the future and having those ideas. And towns and cities are effective and they are productive, and in some ways they're aggressive, taking on new ideas that a lot of others would backtrack and say, no, these are the towns and the cities that are making headway because of what they're doing.
All right. Elizabeth, sustainable towns or cities are
At the root cause and solution for our climate issues.
wonderful. That's a great way to end it. So to each of you tonight, to our panel, our distinguished panel, it was wonderful talking with you, wonderful working with you. I hope to see you soon and visit your respective towns. And to our listening audience, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Good night to you.
Thank you for the
Awesome.
opportunity.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.